What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of New Pod here on notfest.com. As always, I am Joshua Toomey. That is Ro Coley. And we are here to take a deep dive into the Deftones discography this week. But we do have to start with where in the world is Ro? And where are you at today, Ro?
I am in Elmhurst, Illinois right now at the Elmhurst, Illinois Public Library. In a lovely private room, but it is a lovely day outside, so it is. It's very nice and it's very private, and I'm happy to be here. So
nice. So you're in town for the Milwaukee Metal Fest. I guess you're in the vicinity of the Milwaukee Metal Fest. So we'll have a little bit of a recap next week on the episode to see if there's any new metal at Milwaukee Metal Fest.
Oh, well, even whether there is or there isn't, I'm still going to talk to people about it, kind of get everyone's take on it, because that's something I've been thinking a lot about, ever since we started this whole thing, is just the idea of, kind of what everyone's interpretation of it is. Is it just drop tuning? Is it the hair? Is it the rap metal? Is it the DJ? Like what? I feel like everyone's got their own take on what sort of makes it. And I think that, when it comes to certain bands, even at this fest, like Warbringer or whatever, while they probably have distanced themselves from, maybe touring with those kinds of bands, I want to see kind of where their mindset is on them,
Right.
Is it a slur, or is it like kind of a slur we own now, that kind of thing. So, so that's what I'm interested to find out with this weekend, and in addition to seeing fucking 8,000 awesome metal bands.
Yeah, it's going to be another weekend of FOMO here at the Toomey household. But the reason we're here this week is we're going to dive into the Deftones discography and kind of rank them, I guess, the least to best. I've got my list. I know you've got yours, Ro. But what was your introduction to Deftones? Do you remember?
That's a good question. You know what? Adrenaline. Actually, when I was doing my zine, Shock to the System, back in the 90s, Maverick Records sent it over to me and was like, "Hey, check out this band Deftones." And it was just Chino's shrieking, the way he sang, the way the everything about it was really. It was so visceral, and that's why I love the album cover of just the cat screaming. It's like, even though it's a cat yawning, but it's like, but the scream, it just looked like he was screaming. It was just so perfect. It was so perfect for them, kind of, unassuming in a way, yet this like massive sound that comes out of it. That's really where my stuff really goes.
I'm looking. I was thinking back on this question for myself, and I can't remember like a specific. Did we see it on MTV at 3:00 in the morning? Did we see it on Headbangers Ball or whatnot? But I remember it just like Korn came out, and then Deftones was like, if you like Korn, check out Deftones. And I even remember I worked at a used record store at the time, and a guy came in that I somewhat knew, and he was like, "Man, I love Korn. Are there other bands like that?" And I was like, check out this band Deftones. And like, so I don't have I can't pinpoint like I can Korn how I first heard Deftones, but they've definitely left a mark in the long run.
Right.
Since you're, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, that was the thing back then also, is that, because it came out around the same time as Korn, nobody knew what to do with Korn. And I think the same thing happened with Deftones, is that nobody really knew what to do with Deftones. And the funny thing is that you always kind of, they always sort of position them sort of together in a way. But the only time I ever saw Korn and Deftones play, it was at like a CMJ showcase crazy show in New York City with like 90 other bands. But that was like the only time I've ever seen the two of them really like,
they toured together, Family Values, like 2006.
Right.
That I did see them on that show. It was like it was the first night of the tour, which was fun. And Chino did come out with Korn, and they did the Ice Cube cover Wicked.
Right,
so
they did Wicked, right?
That was fun. But let's dive into our list, man. I know you don't have a ton of time. You're on a blocked out time schedule there at the library, and you don't want a librarian coming in, hitting you with a ruler or anything.
Seriously. She looks very, very scary.
Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 albums. So
I realized that there's 2 albums that I was not really aware of. I didn't realize about Gore and Ohms. So I'm going to be I'm going to actually have to defer to you on some of those. In that might actually those are part of my new. I have to listen to them because I really I didn't realize that my Deftones knowledge had been a little bit stunted. So.
It's funny when you dive into into discographies, and I'm guilty of this too. Like, I can say that I love a band, but sometimes what I mean is that I love an actual just one album or a couple of albums, and maybe not necessarily an entire discography. But Deftones, man, it's definitely one of the bands that, as I was kind of going through the discography today, it's a tough one to. It's really like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D with me.
Right.
There's not a lot of even the lower ranked albums are still great in my mind. So
right,
but I will go with number 9 for me was Gore. I think that's kind of a heavily panned album by Deftones fans. And I went back to it today, going, well, maybe I was wrong, maybe everybody's wrong, but I gave it a good listen, and yeah, nothing jumps out of me on Gore.
Yeah, like I said, unfortunately, I don't know enough about that one. That one in Ohms, I feel really bad that I don't. But one of the things I did notice, and if I could speak to this, is that one of the things why my Deftones, I'm trying to think of the word, but like the reason I liked the Deftones was always this. They had these really, like, especially on Adrenaline and Around the Fur, like they just had these really amazing riffs.
Yeah.
And then I feel like as the albums kind of progressed, I felt like the riffs kind of went away. I don't know if that's 100% accurate for everybody, but it's I know that I was reading interviews with Stefan where he felt like they were starting to become more Cure-esque, and after seeing them at Sick New World, I kind of felt like that too. I felt like a lot of their songs kind of went very much into those kinds of directions, and it was starting to, I was kind of getting to that point where I was like, okay, like. I need to hear, Root, or I need to hear My Own Summer, or I need to hear Labia. I need to hear, one of these songs that I can really kind of really grip onto. But like when I was listening to the self-titled record, I noticed that a lot. I was just kind of like, I felt like it was this kind of weird lack of riffs. Sort of thing. So I don't know if that really kind of goes along this path, but that's kind of where I was.
Yeah, and that'll actually go into my number 8 was self-titled. And that Gore I'm not a big fan of, but even self-titled, first 3 tracks off of it are, Hexagram, Needles and Pins, Minerva, even Good Morning Beautiful. I mean, there's definitely Bloody Capes on that record. So I mean, there's definitely a bunch of great tunes on that record, but as an overall collective of songs, it's not my favorite. And I will say one thing going through the Deftones catalog is Deftones are the kings of track 1. Like every track 1 on every album is fucking amazing.
That is very true.
Even on Gore, like the one good song on Gore is track 1.
Yeah, that's what I started noticing. And even on that self-titled record too, I felt like Chino's screams were, I felt like he couldn't carry them out very well. Yeah. In a lot of regards. So that's why I was like, as I was listening to that self-titled one again, I was just like, man, like it felt like, it just felt like a step, not a step backwards per se. That's not what I want to say at all. Not a step backwards. It just felt like they, like almost like they were trying to run a race again after they had just ran a race, So I felt like it was just them kind of like almost like being shoved into a studio and being like, all right, make it again, do it again, like that kind of thing. It just didn't feel like it had that cohesiveness that I was really, really wanted with them. But what I can say is that Abe's drumming to me across the board, every single Deftones song I listen to across the board, Abe's drumming is the thing that for me constantly holds it together.
Yeah.
It always, even with the lack of the riffs and all that, like the stuff that I really liked about the first 2 records, it's like, I feel like his drumming just comes in and always just, I'm like, oh, okay, there we go. There's Deftones. Oh,
yeah. I get what you're saying. Like the riffs, like the riffs on the first couple of records are very notey, like a lot of notes, and the later records are almost like jet tones, like they get all dun 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 dun, just very 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 almost genty and just chuggy, yeah, I was, because even when we go back to Adrenaline and things like that, you're like, oh crap, like all the busy guitar work that's not so much on the later records.
Right. And it's like I never really looked at it as busy guitar work, but I always looked at it like it was these riffs that were like, like you said, it just kept going. It's stuff like that I feel like I've been missing with them, but yeah, that's I'm right there with you on that one for the self-titled.
Do you have a list? At some point, you know
what's funny? I was going through the list, and I was just kind of going backwards, because to me, if I start at the beginning like that, like Adrenaline's always going to be number one for me, And
spoiler alert.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of it. It's like I'm kind of I was kind of like reversed in a way. So it's like, to me, each record that came out sort of had a little bit less of an impact on me as opposed to those first 3 records, especially, and some of that stuff. So that's why I was kind of like, as I was looking at it, it's, my list kind of goes 1 all the way up to 9, kind of thing. So that's
it's almost in order.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It pretty much is. Okay. Although I will say that Diamond Eyes, though, does come in as my number 4. I know we're kind of jumping around. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry, I jumped around. Why don't we keep doing it your way, and then we'll just keep.
Well, it's funny because actually Diamond Eyes is my, I guess this is number 7. And the you're a big Star Wars guy, so you'll understand this, but kind of the trilogy of those middle records of like of Saturday Night Wrist, Diamond Eyes, self-titled, like those 3 albums to me are very, they would almost be very interchangeable on this list,
right?
Because they have a lot of great tunes on them, but then at the same time, when I was doing my listens today, I was like, well, this song has a couple of more tracks on it that I like over Saturday Night Wrist or whatnot. So Diamond Eyes actually came in at number 7 on my list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Diamond Eyes would be, considering I'm kind of Xing out the last 2 records, unfortunately. Yeah. I would say that their self-titled is like my number 10, if you will, as like the least. But Diamond Eyes is number 7, 6,
4, 3, 2.
4. I don't know. Yeah. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I like that. But there's just
again, this is where we're into that. This is where we're into that area of it's still, like bad Deftones is still good Deftones. Right. That whole thing too. So even though it's number 7 on my list, that doesn't mean I'm not going to listen to it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of it. It becomes more of a, almost order of listenability in a weird way, so I'm right there with you on that one. As far as I really like it's your number 7. It would be my number.
I think you said 4, right?
But like I said, I'm going to be jumping around, I guess.
Well, then we'll dive into, the next I have on my list is Saturday Night Wrist, which, Hole in the Earth is, if I'm going to make a Deftones, if I had a playlist of 10 tracks, Hole in the Earth is probably going to be on there. And, Rapture is a great song. This one is this one's like a time and place kind of record, because I remember in 2006 getting this album and just kind of, the son was just born, and there's a lot going, like I have a lot of memories and life lived during this record. And that, that's going to impact even my top, top 5, top 3, top 4, pretty much everything has life revolving around it too. It's like, so that's right. When I think of Saturday Night Wrist, I think of, where I was living and what was going on and everything else too, man. So great record. And definitely I guess that's number 6 on my list.
Okay. Yeah. For me, Saturday Night Wrist was a good record, but I think you're right though. I think when it comes to Deftones too, when you really think about it, for me as well, it really is a time and a place thing. Because around 2006, I was 100% fed up with the music industry. Okay. I was done with it. I had just worked at Warner Brothers Records, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. So it was like, it became one of those things where when that record came out, I don't want to say I didn't give it a chance. I don't think I gave anything a chance back then. I was just kind of like, just in a different mind space. So it's almost like when I hear it, I'm kind of like, it's sort of that reminder of that time. But on the flip side of it, that's why, Diamond Eyes, which came out in 2010, was kind of like it was right after I started War Machine, so everything was starting to feel more fresh to me again. And then when I put on Diamond Eyes, I'm like, oh, this record is just so goddamn good. It's like just so many of those Diamond Eyes songs, like you've seen The Butcher and Beauty School, and just these songs are really great, but with Saturday Night Wrist, I think I need to live with it now in a different kind of way. Cause even just listening to it, just in the last few days, prepping for this, I was just kind of like, I don't remember this, I don't remember. It's like, it was almost like a time period for me that's just kind of sort of a big blank, but like you said, Hole in the Earth is a great song. I really dig Rapture. There's some Rats I really like. Some really great tracks on this record. But I think but for me, Diamond Eyes is definitely ranked higher than Saturday Night Wrist.
Yeah, Rats. Actually, listening to that today, I was like, Jesus, it gets like insanely heavy towards the end there, and just great bridge, great outro, and even kind of going back to self-titled. There was stuff kind of later in the record that I was kind of doing the same thing, where it's like, I don't remember this song, or like I'm like, is there new Deftones I don't know about?
Right.
It's like bonus Deftones from back in the day.
Right. That's kind of how I felt about it. I felt that self-titled record. I mean, like I said, I know we're bouncing around, so it is what it is. But I felt like that self-titled record, every song sounded like, like at the end of a record when they have like the 90 minutes of silence and then they throw that secret track at the end.
Right.
I felt like every song was that track, where it was like, it's a good Deftones song, but not like, but again, just this kind of thing that you'd kind of tack on the end of the album, and that's why I was kind of really trying to, I think there's like one or two songs where I'm like, all right, that one's cool. But like for the rest of them, I was just kind of like, I'm like, it feels like, that's why I said, like, I felt like it felt kind of forced to me, but yeah, I mean, that's, Saturday Night Wrist is definitely a little lower on the list for me than wait, were we on? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Saturday Night Wrist. I think
I'm sorry. Don't mind me.
Diamond Eyes, but
don't mind me. I don't know anything anymore.
You've been
I think all this travel has officially melted my brain.
Yeah. And this is on the list where I have number 5. I have Ohms.
Okay.
I think Ohms is a just a well put together album that kind of takes away the taste of gore from everyone's mouth, and then just really encapsulates kind of everything that the Deftones do great.
Right.
And I'm sure we're probably going to get a lot of hate because we keep calling them the Deftones. Yes, we understand they're called Deftones, but it's so hard to just not say the Deftones.
Right.
Even though it's not the Korn or the Limp Bizkit.
True. But it's like the English thing. It's like going to university or going to hospital.
Yes.
it's like that.
But yeah, man, Ohms is a great record, and another great track one is Genesis.
I have to live with this record.
Yeah, it's a good one, man.
For sure.
4 on my list, I think, is going to actually surprise you. 4 on my list is Adrenaline.
Really?
Yeah, though I went back to it again today.
That's what I got to say.
I went back to it again today and fell in love with it again today. But when it comes to like my go back to Deftones records, this one doesn't really ever make the cut.
Oof.
Yeah.
That hurts me right in this area, wherever my heart happens to be.
Wherever your heart is today.
Yeah.
But yeah, but again, it's another thing where it's 1A, 1B, 1C. And I mean, the charm of the records there, I think it's the guitar tone that kind of gets me on that one. And I think that's one thing over the years Steph has kind of taken care of is that massive guitar tone that he has now. That first album is a tinny, just weenie guitar sound, but great songs. And obviously great to hear Cheap playing bass and all that stuff on it. But Adrenaline's my number 4.
Oh wow, yeah, no, Adrenaline's definitely my number 1 for sure. I mean, that record is, it's funny because all the things that you didn't like about it, I do.
Right.
Because it's not that I always felt that it was tinny. I always loved that it came in those the intro parts of the song, but then it would kick into the it would kick into the crunch. And I think that's, and when I listen to Adrenaline, especially, I pictured Chi playing bass.
Yeah.
And there was a certain Same thing. Like I said, like when my zine came out and everything, and that's what we were covering. It was just like I look back at all those old photos of him and Stefan and all those guys just playing these tiny clubs and everything, and it's just that part is very much that was such like the prime 95, 96 were like my prime years for just doing my zine, interning at like Roadrunner, just interning at all these places. Just my whole kind of musical world was sort of being like crowbarred wide open. Yeah. And Deftones was very much a part of that. So they would come to New York all the time and just play these shows. And it was each time they played, it was always just 100,000%, you know, like they put every ounce of themselves into every show and just, you know, I mean, come on, like you hear Engine Number 9 and like it's you know, I'm 48 now. It's hard to not throw myself around the room when that fucking song comes on. You know, actually, I saw Suicide Silence cover Engine Number 9 one time, and it was like you would think somebody threw a grenade in the pit because it was just bodies just flying everywhere. You know, it was just, you know, that record to me is just. It is, man. It's just pure adrenaline, just like fucking Root and 7 Words and Nose. I mean, God, 1 Week, all of those songs. Like there's something about that also where it's kind of like with the band Dredge also, where it's like when I'm in a crowd and they play like the first like 2 notes and the entire crowd knows exactly what song it is. You know, and that's how it is with adrenaline for me. It's like I can be driving somewhere. I hear the beginning of like, you know, Bored or 7 Words. I'm like, who's playing Deftones? You know, like it's something that it's like it triggers something in me that comes from a place of just this, like I said, just this kind of raw experience in a way, because it was just everything was so new to me in the music industry, and music was just exploding for me, that this record became one of those things that sort of really cracked open more of like what's going on the West Coast, you know. And especially with it kind of following Korn, it just really became this. It started to snowball very quickly. But the thing that I did like about it also is the fact that Terry Date produced it instead of Ross Robinson, which is what everybody was expecting. Everybody was expecting Ross Robinson to do it, and Terry Date did it. And I think that in and of itself is really important to think about, like just almost how different it would have been if Ross had done it. Yeah, you know.
I love Terry Date. So
I almost feel like it would have been, it would have had, because the thing about Ross Robinson to me is that he always makes records sound really big, but he also makes them sort of sound like demos. That's like the best demo you've ever heard kind of thing, but it's still raw like a demo. And I think that's why I'm like, if he did that with Deftones, I almost don't feel like it would have necessarily translated as well. So I think what Terry Date did on that record really was, I think he really pushed, like, you know, Chino's vocals. I think he really pushed, you know, Stefan's guitar sound early on, so that it was kind of like, this is what they sound like, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, I interviewed Terry Date a year or two ago, we actually did the entire Pantera discography, which was amazing to talk to Terry about. But at the end of it, because he did do Ohms, so I snuck in a couple of Ohms questions at the end, you know, because it was just coming out, I think, at the time. But yeah, I love Terry Date and everything that he does. And yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have seen what Ross would have done with it. But yeah, there's definitely like a Ross quality, like the first Cold album to me sounds like a crazy demo because of Ross and stuff like that. Just because he does definitely have a like tones that he kind of creates for everybody and kind of gives everybody kind of the same sounding ish record. That's definitely not polished. It's definitely more raw. It's definitely, you know, more in your face.
And I also find that he gets these kind of vocal performances out of bands like Max and you know, Corey and all these kinds of people, you know. So it does make me wonder, like, if he had done it with Chino, like how that would have necessarily, you know, could have improved it or maybe taken away. I don't know, but like that's always my thing. It's like, you know, when I listen to Glassjaw, when I listen to Roots or whatever, you know, and you hear, or even like Korn's first record, you know, when you hear Jonathan, like really like those real hardcore emotional screams, you know, I wonder how that could have been on a record like Adrenaline. But at the same time, I think what Terry Date did was sort of not take the rawness out, but sort of control the scream a little bit, you know, which I think made it is one of the things that made it such a huge record for me.
My number 3 is Koi no Yokan. This one, man, I Swerve City is probably top 5 Deftones song of all time.
Really?
Just kind of start to finish, man. This is a album that kind of takes old Deftones, new Deftones, and just like this is kind of encapsulates like this era of Deftones for me. Definitely one of my favorites, and obviously number 3 on my list.
Yeah, I would. Koi no Yokan, I think I put just before. I ranked it like kind of like number 5, I guess you could say, below the self-titled. But it's a super solid record, and that's why I like Diamond Eyes, because Diamond Eyes kind of made me feel like, okay, good, this is kind of the Deftones I remember. This is the Deftones I know. This is the Deftones I really like. And you're right. And then Koi no Yokan kind of took that sort of feeling and still kept it evolving, which I also, when it comes to them, it's like, I don't want Deftones. I don't want Adrenaline Part 2 or 3 and 4 and 5. I want to see some kind of evolution happen with these bands. And sometimes, the direction goes off a little bit, and then you're like, yeah, okay. But, I'm of the mind where it's like, being a huge Kiss fan, they have 28 studio records. Yeah, you're bound to have one that's not going to necessarily hit the mark. You're bound to have one or two that, they can't all be zingers, as Primus says, like they, so so Koi no Yokan. I remember it took me a minute just to get into the name, even, because I was just like, I don't even know what I'm saying. I feel like I'm saying gibberish. I'm sure translated it means whatever, but but at the same time, once I got past the title of the record, like you said, it was just this beautiful melding of old and new Deftones, which is really, really good. And that's why I really need to listen to, Gore and Ohms, because I don't know why my Deftones knowledge kind of stopped at that record. I thought that record had come out way, way later. I thought that came out around 2016, like when Gore did, but
the untranslatable Japanese phrase "koi no yokan" or yokan, however you want to say it, is probably is close to the premonition of love.
Interesting.
Untranslatable phrase that predicts love, maybe.
Well, it's kind of weird because like Asian cultures and a lot of cultures have like these terms for like a very specific emotional feelings from a certain stimulus. So it's like, there'll be like some term that's like, oh, when you trip underneath a cherry blossom and you hit your head, but then you remember your loved ones. And it's like, oh, that's this word, right. And you're just like, oh, all right. I didn't think there was a word for that kind of thing. But I mean, I guess in a way, that kind of also makes sense too, in that it's this sort of, not amorphous kind of phrase about love and kind of finding love, when you look at even just the names of the songs, like Romantic Dreams and stuff like that, it's like there's still so many, it very much fits into that vibe. One of the things about the Deftones, though, when it came to like their albums, was just the album art. I'm always just kind of like, why that?
Right.
Like why did you go with that? I mean, that's why Adrenaline I got, but like, Diamond Eyes, I was just kind of like, all right, the owl can always mean something. Not Adrenaline. Sorry. The Bored single was the cat. Sorry.
Right,
the Adrenaline one was the little like suction thing for a baby.
The nose picker or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Snot grabber.
Yeah, either that or it's like a shell, but it's like, and same thing with Around the Fur and stuff like that. I'm always just like, I think that's what I want to really start looking into, is like, okay, why? What is there a reason behind it? Is there not? I mean, maybe sometimes it's just like, no, we thought that was a cool picture. Can't argue
Around
that.
the Fur is definitely, that was just a cool photo they found.
Right.
The photographer that they had at the time was just showing him all these things, and it just happened to have this one photo of this girl.
It's just I mean, not to say that, there needs to be an A to B correlation between the album cover and the title. It's not about that. I just wonder about stuff like that, like where that sort of concept usually comes from. That's why it's like when I think of Adrenaline, I think of the Bored CD single where it's got the cat,
that's such a classic,
right? And in my head, that is the cover of the album, but it's not. It's that nose suction-y thing. And again, it's just like, the cat makes sense. The suctioning thing, not a clue. And same with like Saturday Night Wrist. I'm like looking at it and No Yokan. I'm like, okay, what am I missing something? But because it actually, No Yokan looks like a place that I've been to actually. In that it's there's a place in LA. I don't know what it is, but it's like it has this it's like these kind of walls of light. Almost like it's like all this light that kind of drapes down, and you can walk through it and kind of kind of move it and stuff like that. So it looks kind of like that. So that's why I'm like trying to figure out like kind of the correlation between the name of the album versus the album artwork, know. But that's definitely something I want to look more into. Is kind of like also like what drives some of the album artwork, because. Same thing goes. It's like as a band, or even working at a label, it's like you want the fans to kind of be able to relate to it somehow. Not that everything needs to be a picture of somebody screaming, but but again, when you go and you kind of go off those beaten tracks and start doing like the nasal sucker thing, or the picture of the girl or whatever, it's like I always wonder how, just kind of what the thought process is. Because it's like, you want to try to get, people who will understand the album cover to hopefully buy it,
But I think like even in your business, I mean, I think you've been around enough people that are trying to do some marketing or whatnot. And they're like, hey, Ro, we want something that screams, buy us or remember us or something. And you just pass that on to, someone that does that, a graphic artist, and the graphic artist sends back what he thinks that is, or he or she thinks that is, and it might not be what was in my brain, but it does come out the way that you want it to. So I mean, it's great because there's obviously a guy at Knotfest that does our graphics, and I'm like, hey man, I'm starting a new metal podcast, give me a logo. And he sent back first thought, best thought, he sent back the current new pod logo. And I'm like, fucking perfect, but I mean, obviously that's not what was in my brain, but when I saw it, I was like, absolutely perfect.
Right. No, it's totally true. I mean, and on a slight side Deftones note, like Glassjaw, everything you ever wanted to know about Silence is just like the Monday through Sunday pill box. And I just always remember being like, did I miss something? Like, I don't, but again, it's, sometimes the subtlety of it all is the message, which I can appreciate, especially when it comes to this band.
On to number 2 for me is Around the Fur. Honestly, could be number 1. This album was an absolute game changer, just for me, for Deftones, for everybody around us. Getting Max on it, just the heaviness of the record. The guitar tones on this album are monsters. And just at the time, I'd seen Deftones a few times on the Adrenaline tour. I saw them open for 311. I saw them, here and there doing stuff. But like, these are the shows that I remember going to, driving from Nashville to Atlanta, and just a packed out, venues in Atlanta, just people going crazy. And such a good time to see the band, and definitely cemented my love for the band.
For sure, it's definitely my number 2 as well. It's not only is it just like you said, like a game changer. They toured with so many different types of bands. I saw them with I saw them with Life of Agony. I saw them with Pantera. I saw them with like Monster Magnet. Like I just saw them with so many different types of bands that it was really cool in that regard. But also, growing up in New Jersey, we had WSOU, who I always want to shout out because that is still the raddest station ever. And so that was something that was able to, because it went from basically like New York City down into like central Jersey before you really lost the signal. So it's like in that span, like they just kind of owned the metal market. So it's like you always knew about the Deftones. You always knew about Deftones. You always knew when they were coming to town. You always knew when Chino was doing an interview. Like, it was like we were always right there. I always felt like, yes, they were from Sacramento, but like they were always like, they were part of the heart of what we were doing at the time.
Right.
And so seeing them was just always this, it was always a party. It was always this huge thing, but those songs are just ridiculous. And then it's like, you know, when they put what was it? What was the song? Change in the House of Flies. That got onto a bunch of different soundtracks. And what was the other one?
Changes on White Pony. But, yeah.
Oh, change. Oh, sorry, not change. Sorry, that's that. You're right. Sorry, I was thinking about that.
My Be Quiet and Drive.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Be Quiet and Drive was on a bunch of soundtracks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we even had. I mean, not for nothing. You know, I'm working on a live band metal karaoke night in LA right now, and we have that as one of our songs. You know, because it's like that's just for Deftones. That's like that and Change are just like the two songs, but we're trying to keep it to nice, you know, heavier stuff. But we had 7 words on our list before, which was super amazing, but like nobody could ever pull it off because it's just like, you know, to keep shrieking suck is just really not that easy to do, you know, on a basis, on a, like, you know, just throughout the song, it's just like so rough on your voice. But this record is just Around the Fur just has, again, it has those great riffs that just go into that Deftones crunch. And then, like I said, having Max on it just made it, you know, just, I think that was the cool thing too, is that, you know, there was that crossover between these kinds of bands was not really a big, you know, like such a big thing at that point.
Yeah.
So to have Max on a Deftones, you know, song, same thing when, you know, Jonathan, like people forget that Jonathan was on Roots, you know, on Look Away from Sepultura. Right. You know, it's like people forget about that, but it's like he was one of those guys that kind of was like, nah, man, I dig this. And, you know, Soulfly took Deftones on tour a bunch of times. You know, it's, yeah, that record is just something else. And like I said, 95, 97, for me, that those years were so seminal to just music in general for me and for the people in my area, you know, because like, I mean, all the way up to like Boston, like WAAF and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was just anytime those bands, Korn, Deftones came around, it was like, where do you just follow the party up the Northeast? You know, it's like you got like you got like a 2-day weekend. You have the weekend, and then you get like a couple of days off for some holiday. It's like, cool, man. Korn is playing all the way up into Boston, from Philly to Boston. Like, we're just gonna go. Deftones is playing from Philly to Boston. Let's just go. You know, so it's just always so easy to see them so many times. And seriously, it's like you never got sick of it. You know, I do have one little weird thing is that they played at this place called the Saint in Asbury Park, tiny venue. And it was so jam packed. I mean, like sweat box. And, but the cool part was that it kept fogging up my camera lens. So every picture I have of the guys in the band, they all have this halo, like this aura, this fuzzy aura going around all of them. And it's just the coolest unintentional effect ever. But like, when I think about like Around the Fur and Adrenaline, like it's just, those are the pictures I think of, is just like that time where, you know, Chino had his dreads and she was rocking the fuck out, and you know, and Abe's is like behind the drums and Stefan's just doing his thing. It was just so, I think it was just so visceral back then. There's something about it. Maybe it was just the closeness of the club shows or whatever, but like those 2 records for me feel close, like to my body, you know?
Right. I'll tell this story in here. I told it on Scott Bowling's podcast, but I'll throw it on this one, man. When I saw Deftones open for 311, you know, we did the whole hanging out of the buses type thing, and just, you know, to meet the bands and stuff. So Deftones come out. We're talking to Chino, and he invites us up on the bus, and so we're hanging out on the bus, and he had just bought a Millennium Falcon, like an old school 70s Millennium Falcon. And this is when I was at the used record store, but it's also a used toy store too. So we had, you know, old Star Wars collectibles and stuff. And we had 2 Star Wars lunch boxes. And I was like, hey man, you know, I can get you, you know, original Star Wars lunch boxes. And he was like, if you do that, I'll give you my address and you can mail them to me. I'm like, all right, man. So I went and, you know, got them from work, and I bought, you know, I shipped them to him, and never heard anything back from him. And then I saw him again a year or so later with the second lunchbox, because I only mailed him one. And it was the Return of the Jedi lunchbox or something. And I was like, hey man, I got the other one for you. He's like, man, I knew I would see you again. My girl threw your address away and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, it's no big deal. But I Trojan horse my band's demos into the lunchbox because I put some demos and some stickers and a bio and all this other stuff. And if you go online, there's a like a tour bus, what do you call it? Like when they show off the tour bus on the inside, and Chino's giving a tour of the tour bus or whatever, and he reaches into his bunk. Yeah.
On the tour bus.
I think it's called like Pink Pop or whatnot. But he reaches into his bunk, pulls out the lunchbox, and he shakes it a little bit, and you can hear all the shit in it. It's like all the tapes and stuff. And he goes, "Yeah, man, this is how I carry my lunch to work or something like that." And then he puts it back, but yeah, you can still hear the cassettes and all the nonsense in the box. But yeah, that was cool. And then the kicker to the entire story is Dewey Halpus, who runs Peer Pleasure Podcast, is friendly with Chino and like gone to his home studio. He said those 2 lunch boxes are still up in Chino's studio. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, man. That was 25, 30 years ago now at this point.
That's an awesome story, dude. That's fucking rad.
Right. I'm like, Chino, you got to come on the show now just because, you owe me for those lunch boxes.
Well, it's like, I remember like working at Streetwise, and I guess it was right before White Pony came out. So they were still probably recording it and everything like that. And so he was always at the Streetwise offices because I guess Velvet Hammer was managing them, and
still are.
Yeah. And it was just, whenever we'd smoke weed, it was just like he had like weapons grade stuff. Like it wasn't even medical grade. It was like weapons grade. It was like he would like it was almost like, hold on, put on some like goggles, take them out with tongs, like, and then it'd be like, okay, cool, let's go back to work. And we'd just be like how do you do this all the time? He was just one of those guys that could just smoke and smoke and smoke and smoke the craziest shit and just be like, whatever, and I'll never, in a weird way, I always praise him for that. But at the same time, I'm always just like, I don't know what that's doing to you.
All right. Well, and that will lead right into my number 1, which is White Pony. This is the kind of I think I'm going to go back to time, place, circumstance, everything else around the record too, living on my own, kind of having like the soundtrack of that time period. But I just absolutely love White Pony.
Yeah, I mean, this record, I have to admit, I came late to the party on it because I had heard somebody play Digital Bath, and I was just like, oh, this is like Deftones? Like, what? Like, really? I was like, what? And so I kind of just sort of passed it up and everything, and then I saw them, I don't remember if it was Snowcore or something like that, and I was just like, all right, yeah, I want to hear, I want to hear something off Adrenaline and around and they started playing this White Pony stuff. And I was like, I need to listen to this record. Right. And now Digital Bath is like easily one of my favorite tracks on that record. It's just like, it's just such a smooth song. It's such a smooth song. I think this whole record really showcases like his vocals so well, like how strong his vocals are. But it also really gave us in my opinion, the first real next evolutionary step to Deftones. Yeah. They still had some heavy as hell songs on this record, but I mean, then you got songs like Passenger and whatnot, and it's just, and Change and all, just these songs that were so uniquely Deftones, but not Deftones at all, and that was when I was like, okay, I've got to give these guys another chance, but then after that, when the self-titled came out, I was a little like, like it just didn't, I was hoping for that same kind of magic that White Pony really like, where it was just like just blew my mind. And then like when the self-titled came out after that, I was like, it just doesn't feel like, it didn't feel like that next evolution, I guess, for me. It kind of felt like almost like White Pony B-sides in a weird way. And then when Saturday Night Wrist and Diamond Eyes especially came out, then I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like now it's kind of, in a weird way, it's almost like you sort of see the evolutionary change, but it's like when something changes like that, there's always going to be the stuff that falls off. Yeah. And I think the stuff that kind of fell off was that Deftones record. And then what was kind of buried underneath that kind of shed skin was when you got Saturday Night Wrist and you got Diamond Eyes and, and then it moved into Koi No Yokan, like it kind of, that's when I feel like it really started. But man, that White Pony record was just, it showed me that the band could do so much more than what I had ever imagined they could do.
White Pony was the first album that my friends and I found on Napster before it came out. like a friend of mine had a T1 connection, and like he had, it took all day to download a song, but we still did it. Yep. But I remember, like, I think we had almost all of this album before it came out. But obviously I wasn't upset with that. But yeah, it was a great album. And even when they added Back to School to it, I know that there was kind of a label push and wanting them to kind of be of the times. But I mean, fuck, that's one of my favorite Deftones songs, and they do continue to play it occasionally. So I think that they, even though they may hate it, as they said, or they knew it was a push by the label to put something a little bit more rappy on the album, I think he killed it.
I have to give, because there's a song that, at first we were going to talk about like our top 10 Deftones songs, and it's not on any record, but this is easily, and I think this is probably my favorite Deftones song, is Teething.
Mine too.
That is that is on every workout mix I have. That's on like every, Rose in a good mood mix, Rose in a bad mood mix.
Right.
It's like, it is that song alone. And I always remember when they would play it live, and it was always it was such a crushing, brutal song. And if you guys don't know that song, it was on the Crow 2 soundtrack. And it's one of those just Deftones songs that's just it's brutal in that Engine Number 9 kind of way, and I always have to, if we were going to do our top 10 list, that was definitely going to be my number one. And it's unfortunate that it's not on any of the record, like any of their studio albums, but it's like, to me, I love that song more than anything.
Yeah. Teething is definitely when we originally talked about doing top 10 songs, that definitely would have been on my list. I don't know if it had been number one, but it's crazy because it's not necessarily on streaming. So I think you have to like find it on YouTube or whatever if you really want to get, find it. But I remember the time that we saw them open for 311. Chino came into the crowd because it was at where Vanderbilt, the University of Vanderbilt plays basketball, is the basketball gym. So he comes out in the crowd and he's like, "Does anyone here know who we are?" And I'm like, what am I, 16 at the time? I'm like, woo, and he's like, somebody got a request, and I yelled Teething at him, and he just smiled real big, and then they played, something else. But
right.
I was like, play Teething.
I remember when they played with Pantera and White Zombie, the War of the Gargantuas tour on the East Coast. I'm pretty sure they did Teething that day too, and that was when he jumped in the crowd and lost his shoe. But it was just like, just back then it was like that song when it would come on is just it hits me harder than any of the other songs. I mean, like, that's what I mean. Like I said, like I love just like every song on Adrenaline and Around the Fur. I mean, I love all of the songs, but there's something about when the beginning of Teething happens, I'm like I'm almost just like everything needs to stop so I can hear this song right now, But yeah, that song for me is just, it's crushing and it's brutal. It's everything. It's everything I want Deftones to be,
Right.
It's that vibe of just I don't know. There's something about the way he screams, the way he does this like whisper rap in that song, and I to this day I really have no idea what the hell he's saying, but all I know is that it sounds great. And if I'm trying to, lift weights or something like that, then I'm going to throw a little bit of extra on just for that song, because it really is. It's just such an amazing, punishing song. So that definitely gets my vote for my favorite Deftones track. That's not on any of these lovely studio records.
Yeah, and I'll even dive into the other album that's on here is obviously the covers, kind of a compilation, B-sides and rarity stuff. Savory is one of my favorite Deftones tracks. which is kind of it's like half Far, half Deftones, but it's Deftones have claimed it over the years. But and their cover of No Ordinary Love, even Simple Man's kind of fun, like so that's definitely a fun album to kind of throw on every once in a while.
But yeah, I mean that's their covers. They did an amazing cover of The Cure's. What is it called? Please, 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 please give me what I want. Is that what it's called?
Please, please, please let me get what I want.
Let me get what I want. That's what it is. Yeah, I remember when I first heard that too. That was like one of the first times I'd heard anybody cover The Cure. Really, another great song is hold on, it's on the Depeche Mode tribute. God, sorry, I'm brain farting in the worst way. Shoot. Oh my God, why can't I think of the name?
I know what you're talking about.
Oh man. Oh, that's annoying, and I hate when I do that. Because now I have to look it up because I that's gonna piss me off if I can't remember the name of it. But it's that. I mean, that whole Depeche Mode record is incredible too, in and of itself. There we go. Depeche Mode cover is To Have and to Hold.
Yeah.
And I love their version of that as well. That's one of my favorite things about certain bands is that when they're really good, obviously doing their own thing, but like when they do covers, it's just like they just like crush the covers so well. There's a couple bands that really do that for me, and like Deftones is one of them. Like where they just like don't have a bad cover, like they could just be fucking around and come up with like the most incredible sounding version of whatever song. Yeah. And they just always nail it. So
I think one nice thing about Deftones as we kind of start to kind of wrap up is the
put that away.
When they, through the years, I mean, they, new metal bands can call them, influences, and shoegaze bands can call them influences, and gent bands can say, "Oh man, I love Deftones." Like they're kind of like even though the record sales don't necessarily show it, like they've been so across the board,
right?
Loved by kind of a band's band kind of thing.
That's very true.
They've been influential on so many different levels.
Yeah, and I think it's. Just like when I saw them, Suicide Silence, play Engine Number 9, they're one of those bands. I mean, now knowing what I know about Suicide, they love a lot of like the new metal stuff and Korn and all that kind of stuff. But back then, I would not have equated that at all. And so to have them play it really kind of, it's the same sort of thing for me, where I was just like, oh shit, like these guys really like Deftones. Like that's interesting, because to me, at that time, especially, to have the new metal moniker was kind of this, like I said, like a slur, and so to have a band like Suicide Silence playing it, I was really sort of taken aback by that. But like at the same time, again, like you said, it's like it shows that their influence really kind of covers this huge gamut, a band like Suicide Silence, or a band like, any of these current kind of bands too, like, like your Bloody Woods and stuff like that. You can hear Deftones in them. Which is really awesome, because it shows that they, just like Korn and just like a lot of these bands, like they've integrated themselves into the DNA of heavy music. Yeah. And I think that's the ultimate testament to any amazing band like them.
Yeah, and I give it to them too. I mean, they added a lot of like sex appeal to music. I was at I think it was a Power Man 5000 concert, but they played Passenger like just over the PA before the show, and like the vibe of the place changed. And I think my tweet was, they just played Passenger by Deftones over the PA, and 3 babies were conceived.
Right.
But Chino has always been just so cool looking, and like just the attitude, and I don't know, man. It's just, I love the band.
Well, like I said about a song like Digital Bath, where it's just this very smooth, like you said, like almost like a sexual, sensual song, that's, it's not there to be moshed to. It's there to be, right. you and your significant other, and, a room full of candles kind of thing, it's like that kind of vibe. And I think that's kind of it. It's like, because like certain bands have like their heavy crushing, blah, 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 but then they'll have like their like slower ballady stuff is, excuse me, like almost too slow, or too ballady, whereas that one is just kind of like almost like their No Ordinary Love cover. It's just kind of this sensual kind of thing, and to be able to toe that line, I think, is something that they've done really, really well over the years.
Yeah, and the thing too, I think with Chino is his voice is not classically the best, but it's emotional and it gets the point across, and it's perfect for this band. Like I don't think he could do many other bands, but like this band just encapsulates, Abe's drumming, Cheese bass, or Sergio's bass, whoever's in the band at the time. Obviously Steph's guitar playing and Chino's vocals. I mean, they're four separate entities, but when they come together, man, it just makes beautiful music.
Yeah, it is lightning in a bottle. That's why when I saw them at I don't remember, was it Not Fest meets Odds Fest, something like that, and just like standing there on the side of the stage, just like watching them and watching Chino just like own the crowd, and watching Steph do his thing, and then just standing right by Abe and just watching him just smash these fucking drums like they owed him money, like it was just like, but again, like you said, it's watching these four individuals just come together and create something that's so amazing and cohesive and beautiful in its own way, like beautiful in its like in the rawness of the emotional output. I mean, it really is something else, man. These guys have really stood the test of time, and I think they're one of those bands that is going to go down in history as being like super just influential, and like I said before, just really knitting themselves into the DNA of heavy music.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, as we wrap up, man, I was going to say one more thing. The last time we saw him in Indianapolis, outside venue that holds maybe 6,000 to 7,000 people, sold out show. And just the vibe of that place was cool. It was an amphitheater, but it was an outside, but kind of compact, and just the air in the place, man. It just was a magical night, and definitely can't wait to see them again. And I'm kind of glad that I'm glad they did Sick New World. I'm glad they didn't kind of thumb their nose to it and be like, oh, we're not new metal, or we're not, a part of all of this, and kind of how they've been for a long time. Kind of anti lumping themselves in with Limp Bizkit and System and Korn and all that stuff, but it was cool to see that they popped up on that bill.
Yeah, and same thing. It's like it was funny because when any of those headliners were on, it really did remind me of what it must be like to be at like a huge like European festival where it's like the band is like here and like the crowd goes all the way the fuck back here, know. But it's like, but watching them, you could just see. You could tell the people who never really heard them were just grooving to it. And the people who knew it were just like, I need to get to the front right now, like really trying to make their way to it. And I think that was really what it was. It was like, it was either you were sitting back and really soaking it in, or you had to be next to it as close as you could be to it, and that was one of those vibes at Sick New World that I really dug was, for each band who just wants to groove to it and who needs to be up front. And that's one of those bands where people were just like, I need to be up front and fucking rock. And same thing, man. Like they took, when I was at Roadrunner, they specifically wanted Glassjaw to tour with them. Mm-hmm. They didn't have any other opening bands. It was just Glassjaw and Deftones, and that was it, and I just remember, at Roadrunner, us being like, holy shit, like that's like, they don't want any other band. No other bands, just Glassjaw. That's all they care about. And it was such a, it was weird because I remember seeing a bunch of those shows, and it's like a bunch of, Deftones fans watching Glassjaw, just like, what? What am I watching? But you could tell that they were still like, well, Deftones brought them on this tour for a reason, kind of thing, So, you could tell that they, even though they didn't really understand it, they were very much like, no, there's something obviously the band loves about this, and I think that really helped create a lot of Glassjaw fans from the Deftones. So, thanks, Deftones.
Well, the library Wi-Fi, I think, is finally pooping out on you over there.
Is it?
Audio sounds good. Your video's getting a little choppy.
Oh, sorry. Well, I just went down a peg here on my thing, but yeah, I mean,
well, it's cool, man. Well, let's wrap it up with if you guys are watching on the Knotfest YouTube, checking out on podcast, make sure to let us know what your list is. What's your favorite Deftones record? Throw me your list of 9. Maybe we'll put them together and kind of talk about them next week a little bit. Kind of give everybody's opinions on what their top 9 Deftones records are, and then we'll have some fun stuff from Ro from Milwaukee Metal Fest, which is a festival that I would see those in like Metal Maniacs in the 90s and just be like, I need to go to that one day. And Jamie Josta brings it back, and I am not there.
But I am. You are here in spirit, that is for sure. But I will be taking tons of video. I'm going to be talking to bands about just kind of about their whole vibe on new metal and everything like that, and just kind of seeing what their vibe is about the current state of music, about what's going on, about some of the new bands that are really embracing this new metal moniker, and just getting everyone's opinions and sharing stories about it, because everyone's got their stories about either how some of these bands influenced them, where they were when they first heard it, or even why they might not even like it. So I think all of those opinions are valid and something that I really want to. I think we're going to explore here on this channel. So.
It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Well, that will do it for a new pod here on notfest.com. As always, I'm Joshua Toomey. That is Ro Coley, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Oh, yeah.